Today we've gathered 3 stories that prove one thing. Some doors never fully close, and some voices never truly fade, not even after death. From the little boy at the palace who still seeks warmth in the guests' beds, to the man who placed 35 calls to his family, despite having been clinically dead for hours, here are 3 eerie stories, perfect for a late-night listen. Turn off the lights, lock the door, and crawl under the covers. You're watching Bedtime Chillers.
Imagine a place where the shadows of the Swedish night never truly lift. A place built for limitless luxury, for extravagant parties, and for secrets whispered in dark corners. We are at a place where champagne once flowed like water, where royalty danced in the great halls, and where world stars like Greta Garbo and Josephine Baker sought refuge from the spotlight. On the surface, Häringe Castle looks like a dream, a time machine taking us back to an era of glamour and excess. But there is another side to this coin. When the party is over, when the music fades and the last guests have retreated to their rooms, that is when the castle truly wakes up. Because at Häringe Castle, there are guests who never check out. They wander the corridors, they stand by your bedside, and they watch you from the shadows. Some seek comfort, others seek warmth, and some simply do not want you there. Welcome back to Bedtime Chillers. I am your host, and today we are taking a deep dive into one of Sweden's most legendary and haunted locations. We are going beyond the standard ghost stories to try and understand what is actually going on inside these walls. This is the story of Häringe Castle. To understand the darkness that rests over Häringe, we must first understand its history. This isn't just a hotel, it is a site that has seen power plays, tragedies, and death for nearly 1,000 years. The first buildings were erected here as far back as the 11th century, and through the ages, the estate has passed through the hands of some of Sweden's most powerful families. Kings, such as Gustav Vasa, have claimed this land. But there seems to be a curse attached to owning it. Wealth at Häringe has rarely meant happiness. The castle we see today was largely shaped in the 1600s, but its true character, and perhaps the source of much of the activity we see today, comes from the 1930s. That was when industrial magnate Axel Wenner-Gren and his wife Marguerite bought the castle. They were the power couple of their time. They were obscenely rich, beautiful, and eccentric. They filled the castle with stolen art treasures from Peru and antique statues, and they built Sweden's first outdoor swimming pool, the same pool guests swim in today. But beneath the surface of their perfect life, a tragedy was brewing. Axel Wenner-Gren was blacklisted during World War II, accused of sympathizing with the enemy. Their empire collapsed. Marguerite, who loved Häringe more than anything on earth, was forced to watch her beloved home fall into disrepair. She eventually died, destitute, sick, and alone inside the castle. It is said that grief and strong emotional bonds can tether a soul to a place. And if that is true, it is no wonder Marguerite never left Häringe. But she is not alone. Far from it. Let us begin with the most heartbreaking figure said to wander these grounds. If you check into the main building, in the older wings, you might wake up in the middle of the night to a sudden, biting cold. It is not a draft from the window. It is a chill that seeps right into your marrow. The legend tells of a little boy, only 4 years old, the son of one of the castle's 17th century owners, Count Gustav Horn. The story is horrific. One freezing winter night, when the snow lay deep outside the castle, the boy was forgotten or accidentally locked out. No one heard his cries for help. No one opened the heavy doors. He froze to death, alone in the dark, just meters away from the warmth and safety inside. The testimonies about the boy are numerous and surprisingly consistent. Guests report waking up as the temperature in the room drops drastically. Then they feel the mattress depress, as if someone small is climbing into the bed. They feel the duvet being pulled off them, slowly and gently. It is not an attack. It is a cry for help. He is still freezing. He is looking for warmth from the living. Some guests have even seen him, a small, pale figure standing by the bedside, staring with large, sorrowful eyes before dissolving into thin air. Imagine waking up to that sight, knowing you are sharing a room with a child who died in agony hundreds of years ago. But there are forces at Häringe that are far more dominant than the little boy. We need to talk about Marguerite Wenegren, the lady of the house who refuses to let go of her property. Marguerite was a woman of the world, used to getting her way, and death does not seem to have changed that. The staff at the castle, those who work the night shift and move through the corridors when everything is silent, have countless stories about her. The most common sign of her presence is the smell. A heavy, sweet scent of old-fashioned, expensive perfume that suddenly fills a room or a hallway where no one has been for hours. She seems to view the castle as hers, still. Cleaning staff have reported cleaning a room to perfection, turning off the lights and closing the door, only to return 10 minutes later to find chaos. Pillows thrown on the floor, chairs moved. It is as if she is inspecting their work and showing her displeasure. She tolerates the guests, but she never lets us forget whose house it really is. A receptionist once told a story about sitting alone at the front desk late one night. She heard distinct footsteps, the sound of heels clicking against the stone floor, walking through the great hall. She looked up, expecting to see a guest, but the hall was completely empty. The footsteps continued right up to the desk and stopped there. An invisible presence, waiting for service, or perhaps waiting to be acknowledged. But are these just old campfire stories? Is it just our brains playing tricks on us in old, creaky houses? That is what skeptics usually say. But sometimes, events occur that are hard to explain away. Events captured on film, right in front of the eyes of the entire Swedish population. We have to talk about what happened during the filming of the reality show, The Traitors. This is one of the most concrete and unsettling pieces of evidence of paranormal activity ever broadcast on Swedish television. The show was filmed at Häringe Castle, and the atmosphere during production was already tense. The participants were isolated, tired, and constantly on guard. One of the contestants was influencer Isa Östling. In one scene, she is sitting at a round table, deep in the game, surrounded by other participants. The air in the room is still. No one is standing behind her. Suddenly, and without warning, we see her ponytail lift on camera. It is not a little flutter. The entire ponytail lifts straight up into the air, as if an invisible hand takes a firm grip on it and pulls. The clip spread like wildfire online. Viewers analyzed it frame by frame. There were no wires, no fans, no one who could have done it. Isa herself has spoken about the event afterward. She describes how, throughout the filming, she felt an oppressive atmosphere in the castle, a sensation of being watched. When she saw the clip, she was shocked. It was a physical interaction. Something touched her.
The question you have to ask is,
Who was it? Was it Marguerite wanting to reprimand a guest? Was it the little boy wanting to play? Or was it something else? Something darker? Because that was not a soft caress. It was a yank, a mark of territory.
and speaking of darkness,
We need to move away from the main building. We need to go down toward the water, to the building known as the Sea Wing. If the main building is the place for sad memories and echoes of parties, the Sea Wing is the place for fear.
here,
The energy is different, heavier, more threatening. Guests staying in the Sea Wing have checked out in the middle of the night, pale and shaken, refusing to return. There is talk of a figure called the Black Monk.
historically,
There is no evidence that monks lived right here, but the land around Häringe is ancient, and who knows what existed here before the castle was built. Those who have met him describe a tall, dark shape, often standing in the corner of the room. He makes no noise. He does not scream. He just stands there, watching.
one guest described it
As waking up to find the air in the room turning thick like syrup. She could barely breathe. When she opened her eyes, she saw the dark silhouette at the foot of the bed. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. Pure, unadulterated sleep paralysis. It was not until she managed to turn on the lamp that the feeling lifted, but she could still feel she was being watched for the rest of the night.
There are also stories of couples
Who begin arguing violently the moment they step inside certain rooms in the wings, as if the walls themselves affect their moods, drawing out anger and aggression, only for them to make up as soon as they leave the area. Is it a coincidence, or does the castle's unhappy history infect the living?
Häringe Castle
Is a place of contrasts. By day, you can have afternoon tea in the salons, stroll in the beautiful park, and feel the wings of history. It is beautiful, almost like a fairy tale. But when darkness falls, the atmosphere shifts. The shadows grow longer, the silence becomes deeper, and the sounds of footsteps, of doors opening, of whispers, they become clearer.
Many paranormal investigators
Have visited the site. They have used EMF meters, spirit boxes, and thermal cameras, and almost all of them leave with the same conclusion. It is not empty here. There is activity that science cannot explain. Lights turning on and off on command. Voices captured on tape saying names or telling visitors to get out. So, the question remains, would you dare? Would you dare to book a weekend at Häringe Castle? Would you dare to ask for the room where Marguerite died, or the room where the boy usually appears?
imagine lying there in the dark.
You have turned off the bedside lamp. The castle creaks as it settles for the night. You close your eyes and try to sleep, but then you hear it. The faint rustling of fabric against the floor, the scent of old perfume creeping into your nostrils, or the sensation of the mattress sinking down beside you. And you know, with 100% certainty, that you are not alone.
Maybe what happened to Isa
Östling was a warning, a reminder that we are just guests in their world. They were here first, and they have no intention of moving.
I want to know what you think.
Is Häringe Castle just an old house with a lot of history, or is it a gateway to the other side? And most importantly, have any of you been there? Have you felt the cold? Have you seen the shadows? Write a comment down below. Your stories are the fuel for this channel, and I read everything.
Most of us fear death because it is so definitive. When the heart stops beating, the voice goes silent. The bond is cut. But what if that isn't true? What if love is an energy so powerful that it can force its way through the veil between our world and the next, using the very technology we carry in our pockets? On September 12th, 2008, Charles E. Peck died in one of the most brutal train accidents in American history. His body was crushed, his life extinguished in a millisecond. But for the following 11 hours, Charles refused to be silent. He didn't just call once. He placed 35 calls from his phone, and those calls, they came from a place where no living person should be able to call from. Tonight, on Bedtime Chillers, we dig into a mystery that challenges everything we know about consciousness. This is the story of the signals from the grave. Charles Peck was 49 years old and at a turning point in his life. He was in Los Angeles for a job interview at the airport. He was happy. He was engaged to Andrea, the woman he hoped to spend the rest of his life with. It was a sunny, warm afternoon when he boarded Metro Link 111 at the Grand Union Station. Charles sat at the very front of the first carriage. It was a strategic choice, a seat he often took so he could exit quickly at his destination. He took out his phone and sent one last text to his fiancée. "I'm almost there. I love you." He leaned back, unaware that he had just sent his final sign of life to the physical world. Just a few carriages away, in the engineer's cab, the situation was different. The engineer, Robert Sanchez, was distracted. His focus was not on the track, but on his mobile phone. He was sending texts, one after another. He missed a stop signal, glowing red against the clear sky. At 4:22 p.m., the inevitable happened. The collision in Chatsworth was apocalyptic. Steel met steel at a combined speed of over 130 kilometers per hour. The first passenger car, where Charles sat, was shoved into the locomotive with such force that it was shortened to half its original length. Andrea waited at the station, but Charles never stepped off. At the wreckage, the scene was nightmarish. Rescue workers described the smell of burnt rubber, diesel, and something else. Much worse, the front carriages were an impenetrable mass of twisted metal. No survivors were expected to be found in what the police called the death zone. But at 9 p.m., nearly 5 hours after the crash, the impossible happened. In the quiet room for grieving relatives, Andrea's phone lit up. The name on the screen made her heart stop. "Charles?" With trembling hands, she answered, "Charles, is it you? Where are you?" But she wasn't met by her fiancé's voice. From the speaker came a deep rhythmic static, a sound described as a mechanical wheezing, like someone struggling to breathe in a vacuum. The call cut out after a few seconds, but hope was ignited. Over the next few hours, Charles's phone became a beacon in the dark. He called his son. He called his sister. He called his brother and his stepmother. 35 calls were registered in total. Every time the family answered, it was the same sound. That eerie, heavy-touchy static. They screamed into their phones, begging him to say something. But Charles remained silent. The family rushed to the rescue commanders. "He's alive. He's trying to reach us." The police took the calls seriously and contacted Verizon. By triangulating the signals, they confirmed the phone was active. The signals bounced off the towers and pointed to an exact location, right in the center of the most crushed wreckage of the first carriage. Because of those calls, the rescue work resumed with full force in the zone where no one was thought to have survived. For 11 hours, hundreds of firefighters fought with cutting torches and hydraulics, motivated by the thought of Charles sitting in there, injured but alive, pressing redial over and over again. At 3:28 a.m., the phone rang for the 35th time. It was the final call. 1 hour later, just as the sun began to rise, rescue workers reached the point where the signal had originated. There, they found Charles Peck. He was sitting in his seat, looking calm, almost as if he were asleep. But the reality was different. When the medical team examined him, the verdict was shocking. Charles Peck had died instantly at the moment of impact at 4:22 p.m. His neck was broken. His internal injuries were so massive that his consciousness was extinguished in a fraction of a second. Medically speaking, it was impossible for him to have touched a phone. He had been clinically dead for 11 hours when the first call was placed at 9 in the evening. He was dead during every call the family answered. He was dead when the police tracked his signal, and here we reach the mystery that still lacks an answer. When the rescue workers recovered Charles's body, they searched for the phone that had led them there. They turned over every piece of scrap. They emptied his pockets. They used metal detectors and search dogs. They found his wallet, his ID, his keys. But the phone, it was never found. It did not exist in the wreckage. Skeptics have tried to explain it as a technical glitch, that the crash caused a short circuit that made the phone dial randomly. But how do you explain a short-circuited phone calling 35 specific numbers belonging to the people Charles loved most? And how could a phone that wasn't even there transmit a signal strong enough for the police to track? Charles Peck called home because he wanted to be found. He refused to let his body remain in that anonymous mass of twisted steel. He used the last tool he had, a frequency, a vibration, an echo of his love, to lead his family to closure. We live in a world built on science and logic, but the story of Charles Peck reminds us that the veil between lives is thinner than we think, that there is an energy in us that cannot be crushed by trains or extinguished by death. Tonight, when you put your phone down to sleep, think of Charles. If your screen lights up in the dark and the name belongs to someone who is no longer with us, do not be afraid. Answer it. It might be someone who needs your help to find their way home. Or perhaps it is those who watch over you, even when the signal should be dead. There is an old truth, one we often forget in our modern world. Energy never disappears. It only changes form. Think of a scream. Think of the pain of a dying human being, or the heavy, suffocating silence of a widow, wandering alone for 22 years through 40 empty rooms. Where do those emotions go when the body finally gives up? Do you truly believe they just evaporate? We all know Anders Zorn, the Swedish giant, the artist who captured light, water, and life. But there is another side to the coin, a side the tourists rarely mention when they buy their postcards in the museum shop. In Mora, by the shores of Lake Siljan, stand two places that act as magnets for what we cannot explain. One is a palace filled with wealth and frozen in time. The other is a graveyard of timber, where houses from the days of the Black Death stand whispering in the wind. Follow me into the darkness. We are going to visit Zorngården and Gammelgården, and I'm warning you, those who once stepped over the threshold here have never truly gone home. Welcome to Bedtime Chillers. Let us begin at Zorngården. Even as you approach the gate, many feel it. It isn't just admiration for the architecture. It's a weight, a sense of the air becoming thicker, heavier. The house was completed at the turn of the last century, a technical marvel of its time. But today, it is a perfectly preserved time capsule. Anders Zorn died here on August 22nd, 1920. He drew his last, rattling breath in the upstairs bedroom. But death was not the end for this house. It was the beginning of a 22-year vigil. His wife, Emma Zorn, lived on alone. She refused to change a single thing. Every chair had to stay where Anders had placed it. Every painting had to remain. She guarded his memory with an iron hand, and testimonies suggest she never stopped guarding it. Staff and visitors have, over the years, reported strange incidents. It's rarely those violent cinematic poltergeists. No. Here, it's about presence. A cleaner working alone during the off-season described a sudden scent. It wasn't dust or old textiles. It was the sharp, unmistakable smell of cigar smoke. Anders Zorn was a heavy smoker. The scent drifted past her in the corridor, as if someone had just walked by, even though she was completely alone in the building, and no one had smoked inside for decades. And then there are the sounds, the heavy footsteps on the upper floor. This is a recurring theme. You hear someone walking across the floorboards in the great room or up in the hall. Steps that sound purposeful, heavy. Is it the master of the house inspecting his estate? But there is another energy too, sharper. Many guides testify to the feeling of being watched by a female presence. They speak of Mrs. Zorn's gaze. It is said that if you move things, or if visitors act disrespectfully, the atmosphere in the room shifts in an instant. The temperature drops. An ice-cold chill sweeps in, specifically directed at the one disturbing the order. One visitor described it like this: I was standing there, looking into the dining room. Suddenly, it felt as if someone was standing exactly behind my left shoulder, so close that I expected a hand on my back. I turned around, but it was empty. But that feeling of being unwanted, it stayed in my body for hours afterward. Zorngården is not a dead museum. It is a home where the hosts are still waiting for the guests to leave. But if Zorngården carries the memory of two people, then the next location carries the memory of thousands. Anders Zorn had an obsession. He wanted to save the old peasant society that was disappearing. He bought up old cottages, barns, and lofts. He had them dismantled, log by log, and transported them to a clearing nearby. He created Zorn's Gammelgård. It sounds like an act of cultural preservation, and it was. But from a paranormal perspective, it is a risky experiment. When you move a house where people have been born, lived, starved, and died for hundreds of years, what follows in the timber? Can you truly rip up the roots without waking what sleeps beneath? Welcome to the Gammelgård. Here stand 40 buildings. Some are among the oldest wooden structures in all of Sweden. The jewel of the collection is a firehouse dated to the year 1237. Let that number sink in. 1237. Before the great kings, before the Black Death. The walls of that house have withstood storms for nearly 800 years. But wood is organic. In parapsychology, they speak of stone tape theory, the idea that surroundings record emotional events. Wood, with its pores and structure, is said to be an excellent storage medium for energy. And what energies live here? Think of the fates that played out between these walls. Children dying of fever, the elderly wasting away during harsh winters when the larders ran dry, people hiding from soldiers, from wolves, from the plague. Visitors at the Gammelgård often report a completely different type of haunting than at Zorngården. Where Zorngården is strict and controlled, the Gammelgård is wild, chaotic. A medium who visited a few years ago refused to enter one of the smaller cottages. She claimed the sorrow inside was so compact, it was like walking into a wall of water. She described a woman sitting in the darkness of the corner, cradling something that was no longer alive. People walking alone among the houses speak of shadows, blacker than night. They move in the corner of your eye, darting behind the corners of the buildings just as you turn your head. It isn't one or two, it is many. It is said that the Gammelgård is like a waiting room for spirits who followed their homes when they were moved. They are confused. They recognize the walls, but not the ground they stand on. A visitor recently told of an experience by the textile chamber. He was there late one afternoon as the sun was setting. It was completely silent, but suddenly he felt a hand against his cheek, a physical touch, cold and rough. He flinched and backed away, but no one was there. The air around him suddenly smelled stagnant, like wet earth. The textile chamber is a focal point. Here, the clothes are kept. Wedding dresses, everyday tunics, mourning clothes, clothes worn closest to the skin by people who are now dust. Many who are sensitive to energies cannot handle being inside for more than a few minutes. It becomes too much, too many voices talking over one another. There are also stories of the children, the sound of bare feet, running on the grass between the cottages, even when the area is empty. Laughter that sounds like it comes from far away, or perhaps from another time. Are these memories playing back, or are they still playing? We humans love to romanticize history. We see the beautiful timber walls and think of a simpler time. But we forget that darkness was a constant companion in the past. And in places like Zorngården and the Gammelgård, that darkness has been preserved. Anders Zorn wanted to give us art. He wanted to give us memories. But the question we must ask ourselves is, what else did he leave behind? If you go to Mora, go inside Zorngården, admire the art, but stop for a moment in the silence. Listen. Do you hear the steps on the upper floor? Do you smell the cigar smoke? Or do you feel the gaze of the woman who refuses to leave her home? And if you venture out to the Gammelgården, do not do so after dark, because in those cottages, among logs from the 1300s, you are never, never alone. This was Bedtime Chillers. Don't forget to subscribe for more darkness. And remember, just because you don't see them, doesn't mean they don't see you.